The digital clock on the command bridge reads 5:17 a.m. A heavy, suffocating tropical haze still clings to the surface of the Caribbean Sea, blending the dark, restless water with the pre-dawn sky in a seamless curtain of gray. But in the cold calculus of modern naval warfare, visual visibility stopped being a relevant factor decades ago. Shattering the oppressive silence of international waters is the high-pitched scream of Pratt & Whitney F-100 engines running hot. 3 Venezuelan F-16 fighting Falcons are hugging the deck, their radar altimeters flickering at a dangerous 1,800 feet. Their nose cones are pointed due north, locked like homing pigeons onto the United States Navy's most valuable and lethal asset, the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. This scenario is unfolding exactly according to what NATO textbooks classify as a Class A asymmetric provocation. It is a textbook move for a rogue state. No radio contact, no diplomatic clearance. Transponders, the digital handshakes that tell civilian air traffic control who I am and where I am, are killed. These 3 jets, purchased by Caracas during the golden age of oil revenue in the early 80s, are tearing through the humid air at 472 miles per hour. This isn't just a flight. It's a gamble with the highest stakes imaginable. The Bolivarian pilots, strapped into cockpits that smell of old sweat and hydraulic fluid, genuinely believed in their own invulnerability. Their tactical calculation was based on classic Cold War doctrines. Use the radio horizon and the sea clutter of the waves to mask their approach. Stay under the radar net. Pop up right in front of the Americans at point-blank range, and force a panic reaction. They were banking on the element of surprise in these dark, confused morning hours. But they made a fatal, catastrophic error. They forgot to check their watches against the relentless pace of American technological progress. They were trying to use 20th century guerrilla tactics against a ship built for the networked warfare of the 22nd century. The USS Gerald R. CVN-78 isn't just a modernized Nimitz class. It is 100,000 tons of nuclear-powered diplomacy wrapped in high-strength steel. The project cost exceeded $13.5 billion, a budget larger than the GDP of many small nations. And every single cent went into making this ship absolutely all-seeing. Her 2 behemoth A-1B nuclear reactors generate 3 times the electrical power of previous carrier generations. That massive surge of juice isn't just for turning the propellers. It powers monstrous computing complexes and sensor suites deep within the ship's hull. While the Venezuelans thought they were playing a clever game of cat and mouse, the carrier was already looking right through them, analyzing the very metallurgy of their airframes and the heat signatures of their exhausts. The Venezuelans had a plan. Get within 20 miles undetected, trigger a frantic alert, and laugh about it at the bar later. Reality was much harsher. The first red hostile track lit up on the large screen displays in the Combat Direction Center, CDC, when the range was still 52 nautical miles. We need to stop and appreciate the piece of engineering that spotted them. This isn't the old spinning mechanical dish radar you see in Top Gun movies that sweeps every few seconds. This is the AN/SPY 6V1, a next-generation multifunction radar with an active electronically scanned array, AESA. 37 modular radar panels integrated directly into the ship's superstructure create a continuous, unblinking 360-degree field of view. Unlike the passive systems of the past, the SPY-6 forms hundreds of independent, pencil-thin beams simultaneously. It separates the wheat from the chaff with terrifying efficiency. The system's algorithms automatically filtered out the noise of the waves, huge flocks of seabirds, and atmospheric static, isolating 3 fast-moving metallic objects in the dark with mathematical precision. More than that, the non-cooperative target recognition (NCTR) system had already gone to work. By analyzing the microscopic modulations in the radar return, caused by the spinning turbine blades of the enemy jets, the system identified them. The operators didn't just know something was coming. They knew these were General Dynamics F-16 Block 15s. They knew their payload configuration was light. They could probably even estimate the wear and tear on their engine bearings based on the vibration trail left in the air. Inside the cool, blue-lit cathedral of the CDC, the atmosphere was one of absolute, almost boring professionalism. There was no shouting, no running, no sweating. War today is silence, air conditioning, and keyboards. In just 40 seconds, the raw data was verified, digitized, and pushed via the secure, jam-resistant Link 16 tactical network to the entire Carrier Strike Group, CSG. The destroyer escorts, the air defense cruisers, and the air wing received the targeting data synchronously. Visual contact was still 12 minutes away. For an untrained civilian, that's a blink of an eye. For the highly trained crew of the Ford, it's an eternity. It's enough time to finish that first cup of Navy coffee, run full system diagnostics, cross-check rules of engagement, and methodically prepare to turn an aggressor into a memory if they dare to cross the line. 05:20 a.m. The air boss, the commander of air operations, voice crackles over the ship's comms with a calm urgency. Launch the alert fighters. On the flight deck, bathed in the harsh, artificial glow of sodium floodlights, the sleeping giant wakes up. Instead of the billowing steam clouds, the hissing valves, and the violent, bone-shaking jerks characteristic of last century's steam catapults, the physics of the future takes over. The EMALS, Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System, uses massive linear induction motors, essentially the same magnetic levitation technology used in high-speed trains or experimental railguns. It is a digital cannon for throwing airplanes. Yellow-shirted handlers signal with glowing light wands. Two FA-18E Super Hornets, armed with live AIM-120 AMRAAMs and AIM-9X Sidewinders, taxi to the shuttle. The pilots salute. A steam catapult accelerates a jet violently, putting massive, uncontrolled stress on the airframe. EMALS does it smoothly, calculating the exact weight of the aircraft 100 times a second to adjust the force. The shuttle snaps forward. In 2 seconds, a 30-ton machine accelerates from a dead stop to 184 miles per hour, punching a hole into the morning darkness. No steam pressure lag, no reload delays. EMALS is ready to fire jets one after another with mere seconds in between, providing a sortie generation rate that no other Navy in the world can match or defend against. The flights, call signs Viper 1 and Viper 2, climb into the sky with the grace of apex predators, their twin afterburners burning like bright blue torches in the gloom. Their mission is simple and deadly: intercept, ID, and escort. But every Hornet pilot knows the reality. When an obsolete jet with a nervous, politically motivated pilot is flying at you, those rules can be rewritten in a split second. Fingers are resting on triggers. Targeting systems are in hot standby, waiting for the one wrong move. 05:24 a.m. The situation stops being a casual intercept. The E-2D Hawkeye, airborne early warning aircraft, loitering high above the strike group like an all-seeing eye, detects a second wave. 3 more bogies are lifting off from coastal airfields in Venezuela, climbing hard to join the fray. Now, this isn't a lost patrol, it's a strike wedge of 6 fighters. In Pentagon headquarters, they call this an asymmetric provocation. Caracas decided to raise the stakes, hoping that flooding the zone with multiple targets would cause the American command and control architecture to choke or hesitate. They wanted to create a saturation effect. The American Hornets take up a commanding station at 23,500 feet, ensuring they have the advantage in potential energy and situational awareness. Their onboard APG-79 AESA radars lock the targets at 68 miles out. This is no longer a drill. This is the mathematics of death, where reaction time is measured in heartbeats and closure rates. The combined speed of the two groups approaches 920 miles per hour. Down on the water, the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, USS Mason and USS Thomas Hudner, switch tactics instantly. Instead of lighting up the sky with active radar energy, they go into MCON, emission control. They kill their active emitters and turn into giant, silent ears. Their AN/SLQ-32 electronic warfare suites begin to greedily suck up the entire electromagnetic spectrum. The Venezuelans, without realizing it, began broadcasting their deepest secrets directly into Pentagon databases. American systems were recording everything: the specific operating frequencies of Venezuelan radars, the pulse repetition intervals of their guidance systems, the panicked voice comms between pilots, even the telemetry of their engines. For U.S. Navy intelligence, this incident was a gift from above. Free ELINT, electronic intelligence, collection in combat conditions. While the Venezuelans thought they were scaring the Americans were methodically digitizing and cataloging their entire Air Force potential for future exploitation. 5:27 a.m. Visual contact established. Viper 1 reports in a flat, bored tone. Tally 6 bandits. Tight formation. External hardpoints clean, no missiles. I repeat, no missiles. This was the core of the provocation. The jets carried only drop tanks for range. This is classic gray zone warfare. If they had missiles, they could be classified as a hostile force and shot down preemptively. Without missiles, they are technically just tourists, violating flight safety rules. Legally, it's hard to pin them down. Factually, it's a direct physical threat to a nuclear vessel. For the next half hour, in the Caribbean sky that was just beginning to lighten, with streaks of orange in the east, a dangerous farce played out. The Venezuelan pilots, trying to fulfill the strict political orders of their leadership, started acting like hooligans. They initiated sharp, aggressive maneuvers, simulated attack runs on the destroyers, and executed dangerous close passes with the American interceptors, trying to provoke a dogfight. One F-16, clearly showing off for his wingmen, performed an inverted pass at 800 feet above the wave tops. In a Hollywood action movie, this looks cool. In real naval aviation, this is considered a sign of gross unprofessionalism and suicidal tendencies. Sea salt spray at that altitude clogs air intakes instantly, corroding the compressor blades, and any piloting error at that speed is fatal. The American pilots watched this aerial circus with icy calm. They didn't take the bait. They didn't get into a turning fight. They simply held their distance, kept their weapons systems locked on, and logged every single violation. It was a conflict of two schools, the disciplined, systematic NATO machine versus an emotional, chaotic attempt to show valor. The Americans knew one physics fact the Venezuelans ignored. The guests' fuel wasn't infinite. They just had to wait them out. 5:42 a.m. The most critical moment of the standoff. One of the Venezuelan pilots, either his nerves finally snapped or he decided the previous maneuvers hadn't scared the imperialists enough, dropped his nose, and went into a steep, screaming dive, aiming directly for the flight deck of the USS Gerald R. On board the carrier, automated reflexes kicked in instantly. The Phalanx CWS, close-in weapon system, woke up from sleep mode. Sailors affectionately call this unit R2D2 because of its white radar dome. But its function is far from repair work. It is the last line of defense. Hidden under that dome is a Ku-band radar that tracks the target and corrects fire by tracking its own tracers in real time. Below it sits a 6-barreled 20mm M61 Vulcan cannon, capable of spitting out 4,500 rounds per minute. These aren't simple lead bullets. The penetrators are made of depleted uranium or tungsten, designed to slice a missile or aircraft in half with sheer kinetic impact. The Venezuelan F-16 leveled out at the absolute last moment, screaming over the deck at an altitude of just 550 feet. The roar of the turbines slammed into the ears of the deck crew like a physical blow. The shock wave vibrated the ship's island superstructure. The Phalanx tracked the target through the entire trajectory. Its servos spun with terrifying speed, keeping the fighter locked in the crosshairs. The computer had already calculated the lead angle. The system was milliseconds away from opening fire. If the pilot had dropped another 50 feet or switched on a targeting radar, R2D2 would have turned his jet into a cloud of burning debris before the human operator could even blink. But no shots were fired. The system recognized the breakaway maneuver. It held its fire. American hardware passed the test of composure better than the Venezuelan pilot. 5:57 a.m. The laws of physics are undefeated. The F-16 fuel tanks, even with the external reserves, were running dry. The show could not go on. Without farewell words or wing waves, the Venezuelan group turned 180 degrees and set a course for the mainland, where the sun was now fully rising over the coast. The USS Gerald R. did not change course by a single degree. She didn't slow down. She didn't speed up. She simply continued on her path, like an elephant ignoring mosquitoes. For the $13 billion giant, this incident was just a log entry, a light warm-up before a full workday of flight operations. However, for the Venezuelan side, this story had a very different ending. And it wasn't written in the sky. It was written in a dark room. An hour later, the fighters touched down on the cracked concrete of El Libertador Air Base. The pilots, exhausted by 40 minutes of high-stress flying and G-forces, climbed out of their cockpits expecting to be greeted as heroes who challenged America. But instead of mechanics and fuel trucks, a convoy of black SUVs with no license plates pulled up to the jets. Officers from the General Directorate of Military Counterintelligence stepped out of the vehicles, their faces hidden behind sunglasses. Let's tally the dry results of this victorious operation. First, the economics. By the most conservative estimates, factoring in aviation fuel, airframe depreciation, and engine life consumption, this sortie cost the Venezuelan budget $49,500. For a country in a deep economic crisis, where hospitals lack basic medicine, that is a colossal sum thrown to the wind for a sunrise PR stunt. Second, the intel. The U.S. gained a complete, detailed profile of Venezuelan Air Force operations. Frequencies, tactics, reaction times, voice patterns. Caracas effectively handed the Pentagon the keys to its sky on a silver platter. But the most terrible price was paid by the people. The pilots were arrested right there on the tarmac. The charges sounded absurd, but within the twisted logic of a totalitarian bureaucracy, they were inevitable. They weren't accused of staging a provocation. They were accused of letting it fail. Why didn't the American carrier turn away? Why did you let them scan your onboard systems? Why didn't you show enough aggression? Instead of medals for valor, the pilots received charges of treason and sabotage. The regime needed scapegoats to explain why the imperialists didn't flinch. The heroes of the sky became prisoners in the basements of the DGCIM, victims of their own government's insecurity. The carrier Ford disappeared over the horizon, continuing its mission. Her crew didn't even suspect that by their total indifference, they had inflicted more damage on the enemy than if they had fired every missile they had. They didn't just repel an attack, they forced the enemy to devour itself. This is what modern warfare looks like. It's not always explosions and burning wrecks. Sometimes, the most brutal victory is achieved through absolute technological and psychological indifference. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more unfiltered stories about real military tactics, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell. Over and out.